Hello and welcome everybody. Can you hear me?
Very clearly.
Good.
Yes.
Welcome to this much anticipated presentation from the Ambassador for Costa Rica, His Excellency Mr. Vargas Araya. My name's Rita Worley and I'm one of the organisers of this festival. This is day 6 of this fantastic festival. Before I introduce you to your host for this session, I have a couple of housekeeping announcements. I'm sorry about that, but that's how it goes. Please keep your microphone on mute throughout the session. After the speech, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. Please write your questions in the chat at the bottom of the screen. There may not be time to answer all your questions, so please accept our apologies in advance if we cannot get to your question. There will be an opportunity to discuss further and ask questions at our informal festival meetup at 3 o'clock today. If anyone has concerns or questions about the session, please send a private chat message to Danielle, who is our tech assistant for this session. And thank you, Danielle, for your wonderful competence. I'll now introduce you to our host or moderator for this session, who will in turn introduce you to the keynote speaker for the Raising Peace Festival. Stuart Rees is Professor Emeritus of the Sydney University of Sydney. He's the founder and inaugural director of the Sydney Peace Foundation. He was awarded the Order of Australia for service to international relations. He's the recipient of the Jerusalem Peace Prize and author of the recent book, Cruelty or Humanity. Over to you, Stuart.
Thank you very much, Rita, and welcome everybody to this highly significant address as part of the equally significant Raising Peace Festival. But before I get there, let me on your behalf acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation on whose land this particular Zoom broadcast is affected, and we acknowledge their stewardship of the land, past and present, and concerning theirs and our legacy to the future. There are numerous reasons as to why the committee organising this festival has invited Ambassador Armando Vargas Araya of Costa Rica to be the keynote speaker. You will know, some of you, that, or perhaps the main reason for the invitation is that Costa Rica, one of the few nations in the world that manages its economy and society without a standing army. It's also a country which in 1987 won the Nobel Peace Prize, and in the past 10 years has been the home of the United Nations Peace University. Ambassador Armando Vargas Araya is a lot more than a diplomat. He's the author of about 30 books, largely about the people, the culture, the democracy of Costa Rica and its amazing environment. And that reference to democracy is important because the key to a peace with justice is largely about the vibrancy, preservation and nurturing of democracy. It's also significant that the country Costa Rica has a Bill of Rights and Responsibilities, and one of the significant rights expected and enjoyed by the people is a right to peace. Well, one of the major issues for the people of Costa Rica, for the traditions and the record of Costa Rica, is a commitment to the language, the philosophy, and the practice of non-violence. And one unfortunate form of violence is when people given the task of introducing a speaker go on for too long. So that really is my cue to myself to say that we're thrilled to bits that this invitation has gone to Ambassador Vargas and that he has accepted. So we look forward to the supposed 20 minutes that you've been given, but like I said to you about 10 minutes ago, you probably deserve 20 hours, but now please come to the microphone for the next at least 20 minutes.
I thank you, Professor Reed, for your very kind words about Costa Rica and undeserved words about myself. And I thank also Ms. Rita Worley and everyone who has been involved in the preparation of such an extraordinary virtual peace festival, and today precisely being the United Nations International Day of Peace. I also thank everyone who has joined us this day to participate in this event. The second year of the pandemic began with a jubilant celebration of peacemakers as the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons entered into force last January. 9 months later, how are we doing? How many more countries have acceded to the treaty? What path are nations following to our understanding and cooperation, or to our arms race and warfare? Is peace in the world advancing or retreating? President Carlos Alvarado of Costa Rica had this to say earlier today at the United Nations Informal Climate Leaders Roundtable on Climate Action, and I quote him: "Facing the double challenge of global warming and the COVID-19 pandemic, it is absurd to maintain or increase spending on militarization and nuclear weapons in an insane race for world domination. Our planet is in danger. The lives of the next generations are at risk." My objective now is to share with you some foundations, norms, policies, and action of Costa Rica's strategy in favor of peace. Each country defines its own course in terms of security and defense, in accordance with its historical development, geostrategic environment, and evolving national interests. Costa Rica might be different, but not better than other nations. In presenting our national experience, we do so with humility and respect. Costa Rica opposes war. We are against violence as a means of overcoming political disagreements. The ancients alleged that war was the ultimate rationality of politics. We believe that war is the ultimate irrationality, the failure of all diplomacy and politics. A strategy of peace is the inescapable imperative of the present hour. All foreign policy and all security policy must be at the service of this virtuous idea. A policy of peace is the true and only course of action for our time. Our democracy upkeeps peace and resists war because we strive to live the ideals of Western civilization on a daily basis. We are a national community sustained by spiritual forces and the moral strength that arises from the will and the hope of human beings. We live in peace with confidence in the best conditions of man for patient and perennial construction of a society that guarantees everyone a free existence and brings us closer to happiness. Costa Rica is not an economic power, nor can it be. Costa Rica is not a military power, nor does it want to be. Costa Rica is a moral power because our people practice a living faith in the might of common sense, the muscle of will, and the force of decency. We believe not in peace through strength, but in strength through peace. Our peace is not a fluke, but the result of the long-term work of a prudent people led by wise rulers on a route of national project with a peaceful vocation. Like freedom, peace is not an original or permanent state. We have to build it again and again every day. We believe that the transition of our republic towards a peaceful, just, free, and democratic coexistence constitutes a concrete and significant contribution to the forging of the destiny of humanity. We are not larger or smaller than the classic Greece, or the Helvetian Federation, today known as Switzerland. An input from a small population nestled in the tropics that has made tolerance its standard of life. A people that does not admit moral indifference and practices freedom of thought. Costa Rica discerns that humanity is getting closer to the dilemma of uniting peacefully around a true universal right, or destroying the entire civilization built in millennia, annihilating us in the hecatomb. Our political aspiration is to contribute with our proven experience to the achievement of peace for mankind. In the struggles for peace, our people find meaning and pride in living. Warmongering, armamentism, and violence do not discourage us. In the search for the ideal, we have learned how to draw hope from despair. The dynamism of common sense, free will, and decency unleash a spiritual energy. We march with faith in the future and with sober realism. Costa Rica's vocation for peace is deeply ingrained in the national soul. As early as 1922, one of the architects of our nationality said, "The school will kill militarism, or militarism will kill the republic." The school has triumphed, militarism has died, and the republic has grown stronger. Other peoples run the risk of having an army. We Costa Ricans prefer to take the risk of not having an army. Persuaded of the advantages of not having a military institution, we are committed to confront in all forums the arms race and the so-called military solution of political conflicts, to uphold our sovereign decision not to reestablish the army and to improve the civilian police forces, to continue to base our external defense first on the will of our people, and then of the mechanism of international law that make the principle of collective security a reality. The process of Costa Rica's strategy for peace is evident since the dawn of national independence, which bicentennial we celebrate this year. 4 years after achieving the emancipation from the Spanish colonial empire that went on for 300 years. The first head of a state cautioned in 1825, and I quote, "The armed forces, which in other states form a necessary element of government, have often been in themselves an ominous instrument of tyranny, a dark source of anarchy and disorder, or a plague that has devoured men and their properties." And in 1891, the leader of radical liberalism, anticipated there will be no permanent army when peace reigns. To maintain domestic order and ensure the safety and tranquility of citizens, the institution of the police is established. This was the historic achievement accomplished in 1948. After a short civil war, a revolutionary junta was established under the leadership of José Figueres Ferrer. A victorious general, Figueres disbanded the vanquished forces, as could be expected. But he then did something unheard of. He disbanded his own armed forces, the very same that had brought his regime to power. In a memorable event, he took a sledgehammer to the outer wall of the country's Cuartel Villavista army base to symbolize the elimination of the remnants of the military spirit of Costa Rica. To this day, on December 1st each year, we celebrate El Día de la Abolición del Ejército, our military abolition day. Article 12 of our Constitution declares the army as a permanent institution is proscribed. Now, let me mention 5, among many, benefits directly resulting from the abolition of the army. Our expenditure in the military is 0. So greater public investment in educational and social programs is one of the benefits. 7.4% of GDP in education, 7.36% in public health, and we have accomplished a life expectancy of 80 years and a half. On the second is a civil and pacifist culture diffused to all aspects of daily life. 11.2 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants in 2019 compared to 25.9 in the rest of Central America. In the third place, world recognition as a free, democratic, and peaceful nation. 2 foreign invasions have been repelled without restoring the army in December 1948 and January 1955. And during the Central American security crisis of the 80s, external pressures to establish the army were rejected. Pressures coming from the hegemonic power of our continent. On the fourth place, institutional and political stability. Since 1948, there have been 71 coups of d'etat in Latin America, none in Costa Rica. Finally, ours is the top rank among 84 countries as the world's best performing location when it comes to attracting foreign direct investment, with a score of 11.4. That's attracting 11 times the amount of FDI that might be expected given the size of its economy. It has come a long way since being an exporter of agricultural commodities decades ago. Medical devices, software, and IT and business service sectors account for 60% of inward FDI projects with or an economy based on knowledge. We are working on that. The abolishment of the army was not a one-off act, but the result of a national trajectory. It is an active process that requires adjustments as conditions change. Challenges such as the rising level of disease due to climate change, public health security in the face of viral pandemics, the exploitation of our ocean's wealth by foreign fleets, the indiscriminate destruction of biodiversity, the threat of drug trafficking and the concomitant crime, the lack of drinking water and healthy food for all, extremist terrorism and human trafficking to enslave, the weakening of multilateralism, as well as new and subtle forms of hegemony. Defining and updating a national security and defense doctrine is a difficult task for a country without a standing army, as there are no examples to follow. Demilitarization is not a bed of roses. Costa Rica continues to develop legal institutions and human rights related to peace. In the most recent 4 decades, the Republic has made a legal commitment to the international community to follow a strict policy of neutrality. It expanded the list of human rights to include the right to peace as a guarantee to each inhabitant. It prohibited the manufacturing and import of weapons of war. It arranged to educate the entire population in a culture of peace and mutual trust, an effort ongoing. It is the headquarters of the UN University for Peace. And in world forums, we have promoted initiatives such as the Arms Trade Treaty, the Central American Peace Agreement, and the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. For these and other reasons, the people of Costa Rica as a whole was awarded the 1987 Nobel Peace Prize. Philosopher Ned Dobos, a professor at the University of New South Wales, Canberra, has recently written of the ways in which Costa Rica's decision to abolish its armed forces has contributed to the country's unity, prosperity, and moral integrity today. To be sure, says he, these are not the only benefits that Costa Rica has enjoyed on account of that one decision. Another underappreciated benefit is that insofar as the country does not need to reproduce and replenish its fighting forces, it does not need to continuously subject its young people to military conditioning and desensitizes them to violence and degrading their virtues. This sentiment is clearly expressed in the words seen at the University for Peace, a recognized institution belonging to the UN located in Santa Ana, Costa Rica. There, a famous phrase from a Japanese philanthropist on one of his visits to the campus is written: "Blessed is the Costa Rican mother who knows when her child is born that he will never be a soldier." This popular proverb thus has a double connotation. The mother need not worry that her child will be asked to die for the state. But just as importantly, she need not worry that he will be conditioned to kill for the state. The 3 benefits of unity, prosperity, and moral integrity are therefore only a sample, not an exhaustive list. And then Professor Dobos writes, and I quote him, "This should give other countries, including Australia, ample food for thought when revisiting their own national security arrangements in the years ahead." I want to congratulate all of you for demonstrating to the world the importance of civil society in finding the way forward in matters related to peace. You've been recognized already internationally by the Nobel Peace Prize, but you continue going on every year doing a lot of action and education and mobilization and celebrations. And this is an example that you are providing to the world. And we appreciate that very much from Costa Rica. To conclude my remarks, I am pleased to extend the cordial invitation for you to visit our haven of peace at the other side of the Pacific Ocean. Our country has been redirecting money, divesting itself of its military in order to raise generations of healthy, happy people who value the importance of environmental welfare. We have many challenges to overcome, particularly after the very grave consequences on public health, the economy, and social problems that are the legacy of this pandemic that goes on. But we wish to share with you our pura vida. That's a mantra meaning pure life, or even more so, full of life, symbolizing the positive energy to be experienced and found in our unique way of life. Many thanks for your kind attention.
Ambassador, thank you. Thank you so much. This broadcast, of course, is by Zoom, because usually you would receive enormous applause for an address which has been so comprehensive, enormously refreshing and inspiring. You've been using a language which is too often not heard. You've been using words too often not heard, in particular in the context of Australia at this moment, preoccupied with an old-fashioned militarism as a way to grope this country towards some false sense of security. So thank you enormously for that. And I'm sure what you've said and the details of your account will have prompted all sorts of questions, which I will attempt to find in the chat. Well, there are as many as about 30 questions already. They're mostly in the terms of, at the moment, of compliments. Can on the health issue, before I get specific questions sent to me, is there universal health insurance in Costa Rica? In other words, is there no cost when you are face to face with a doctor or in a hospital?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. In the 40s, and the decade of the 40s, in the past century, the social security system was established in Costa Rica. There it's called the Caja Costarricense de Seguro Social. And now it's a system that permeates the whole geography of Costa Rica. We have a basic public health unit per 5,000 inhabitants all through the country. That's the first level attention. Then we have regional hospitals. Then we have the national hospitals. And the coverage by constitution of the public health system is universal. That means that any human being, without having to present the ID or the passport, is entitled to receive the same type of service and attention that any Costa Rican will receive. It's a tripartite system in which the state contributes, the worker contributes, and the enterprise also contributes. And we are going now through a very difficult period in trying to, because of the changes on the way production and workforces are evolving in the world, we are going through a difficult period of adjusting and trying to find a new way to maintain our public health system. But yes, It is up and running, and we are very pleased that it has been recognized a number of times as one of the most complete public health systems in the world today.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll proceed quickly to several questions. There's a question about the difference from an indigenous, from an Aboriginal point of view. Is there a necessary separation of power and authority? Would the ambassador comment on this? And, is there a necessary separation of power and authority? I suspect that's got something to do with your reference to the spirituality of Costa Rica.
Yes. A majority of the original population of Costa Rica died during in military invasion and occupation of our territory by the Spaniards, army and private initiatives, etc. We have today around 2.5% of the total population in Aboriginal communities. Their language is recognized, yes, in the way that they proceed within their own areas where they live. They use customary law applied to themselves. In relation to Costa Rica, as the Republic, the United Republic, they have to follow the same laws that are adopted for the society, with obligatory language translation and special assistance, legal assistance, whenever they go to a tribunal. That was recently reaffirmed when in one case there was not adequate translation for a lady that came to the court for reclaiming her rights, and finally it was decided that the whole process had to start all over again, because yes, the Aboriginal population has to follow the same legal system that covers all Costa Ricans, but in their case, they need to have full translation and adequate assistance, especially for them in their languages.
Oh, excellent, thank you. Now there's an interesting question from our colleague, the Greens Senator Janet Rice in the Federal Parliament. Janet's interested to know how Costa Rica cope with threats without a military, threats to the country without a military.
Yes. On two occasions, Costa Rica, after the abolition of the military, was invaded, as I mentioned before. In those two occasions, there was a public movement of voluntary, and there was a militia formed under the direction of the government. And they went to the border to resist the invasion. But in both cases, immediately, Costa Rica appealed to international organizations, in this case, the Inter-American Juridical System. And in both cases, there was a very strong diplomatic intervention to restore things before, as they were before the invasion. Since we have neutrality, we have applied neutrality traditionally since the beginning of the Republic. But now it's a legal obligation. So we have to act very carefully with our neighbors and any potential threat coming from abroad in order not to create situations of dangerous situations for Costa Rica. We believe in dialogue. We practice that. We talk a lot. Change is slow, because when you bring 100 Costa Ricans around one issue and trying to discover a way forward that will be acceptable to all, you will not reach that. But 70% approximately will agree on a way forward. But it requires a degree of maturity, of pragmatism, and it requires a lot of time also. Being an armed democracy without an army requires a lot of talent. This is like living in your home with your family. You have to talk a lot to your partner, and both have to agree that things cannot reach a point. And that is what we try to practice in Costa Rica.
That's a very interesting comment, because the next question from Bronwyn Vost is, can you say something about domestic violence in Costa Rica? Has it been reduced since the army was disbanded? And does Costa Rica have much lower levels of domestic violence than surrounding countries?
Unfortunately not. Because of the pandemic, the domestic violence is going up. It's another of these societies affected by this. But because of a problem that we did not create it, but it's a tragedy that we share. Costa Rica is in Central America, which is a geographical bridge between the continent of South America and the continent of North America. In North America, you have the largest and most affluent market for drugs. And in South America, you have some of the largest producers of drugs. So they use the natural bridge that is Central America to for transiting the drugs from the production sites to the market. And that has created many, many difficulties for Costa Rica. We are cooperating with a number of countries, but this is a big challenge that is affecting every sector of the society. Those two elements are very serious. And in our effort to create a true culture of peace and understanding, we have to begin at the elementary school and before that, in order for us to learn to practice the wisdom that comes from other cultures in how to live peacefully. But that is something in which we are working. One difference is in the communities that have created strong links where they have social capital in terms of very good interrelation between the different peoples in a community through the cooperative movement. The cooperative movement has been very important in Costa Rica. Some 10% of the population is involved in the cooperatives, and the co-ops help to create this spirit of understanding.
Related to the question about domestic violence, would you comment on the extent of gender equality in every context of life in Costa Rica?
We are participating very conscientiously on that. Half of all electoral positions have to be filled by women. So in terms of gender for the elections, and we have elections coming now, general elections in February of 2022, 50% of all candidates have to be women, 50% men, and the head of the lists in different jurisdictions, they have to alternate between one and the other sex. And we are working, you'll find that we started with co-education at the very early in the 20th century. And now a majority of professionals coming from the universities and training schools are women. And we have women running local governments. We have had a president of the Supreme Court of Justice, a lady. We elected a lady as president of Costa Rica, the Republic, and 5 women have been chairing the parliament in different periods since the 50s to now. At present, 1 lady is the president of Congress.
Okay, okay, that's very reassuring. Now, my colleague Frank Hutchinson asks you to comment on the $2 trillion spent on the arms trade worldwide. What's your reaction to that massive expenditure? Insane
and absurd. Those are the 2 words that the president of Costa Rica used earlier today at the UN. It goes against common sense that when we need more money for fighting the pandemic, when we need more resources to fight the climate change, the warming of the planet, there is not enough resources for that. But the expenditures, military expenditures, keep growing. In the last 2 years, they've been growing. In 2019. This makes no sense. And that's why I mentioned in my remarks the importance of the civil society movements that speak for the conscience of humanity. And we are very, very satisfied to be a part of this movement, as we've been on questions of war and peace.
Look, Ambassador, I know you're a diplomat, but you're in good company here. So would you care to comment on Australia's latest alliance with Washington and London?
I will apply the rule of Costa Rica here. In Costa Rica, by constitution, decisions that have to do with foreign affairs and public security and defense are entrusted to the elected officials. And we always hope that they will act in the best interest of the country and the best interest of humanity. If the population is happy with that, they are re-elected. If the population is unhappy, they will express themselves with full freedom. And then when the time comes, they can change the direction that they want. We respect the decisions that are being made by other countries, and we respect and understand the decisions that are being made recently by the government of Australia. We are different, we are not better, but we respect.
Sure. There's a question here from Marie about the economic system of Costa Rica. I mean, one of the arguments among most of us in the peace movement would be that laissez-faire economics, neoliberal economics, has caused enormous inequalities, has been maintained by violence, and has really benefited mostly the top few percent, and really makes very little contribution to peace. What's the economic system operating in Costa Rica?
It has been 40 years since neoliberalism has been dominating economic and political thought all around the world. We are suffering, the society in Costa Rica is suffering the consequences of growing inequality, and more so than in many other countries. But there are basic contradictions between the capitalist society in which we are and democracy. One of them, the production process, is a social process, but the accumulation process is individual. So that's why you need strong state that can try to balance the different forces acting in a society. The difficulty comes when one school of thought dominates completely the strategies and policies, not just domestically, but internationally also. But I think I am listening more and more voices all around on the need to correct the direction in which we have been going in order to reestablish a balance in the distribution of the results of the productive effort of the whole of society. And we are following with particular interest the positions that different candidates are presenting to the electorate in Costa Rica today, with a view to the election that it's coming next February, with realism, because Costa Rica is just a very small portion of a global movement that has to do with the school of neoliberalism.
Okay, look, I'm just going to warn the audience that because I've got a torrent of questions, I'm proposing to go about 5 minutes over time.
Yes, and Stuart,
okay,
yes, so Stuart, yes, I'd like to say we are already a little over time, and if people would like to stay on for another 5 minutes, we can do that. And there's also been a request, if you would like to turn on your video so that the ambassador can see all of us wonderful people joining this session, we'd love to see your faces for the last few minutes. And it will also allow you all to give a big applause. We'll be able to see you applauding. We won't hear it, but thank you very much.
Okay, Rita. Well, another 5 minutes at least, Ambassador. There's a question from Benzain Aruna about the nature of the media in Costa Rica. To what extent is it privately owned? What's the influence in people's consciousness about their lives in the future deriving from media ownership?
You are better off here than Costa Rica.
Wow.
where the private dominance of the communication sector is monumental, and the public sector is very small, but universities have radio stations and TV stations. The cooperative movement has some, and there are other elements participating in public debate. But television is number one. The printed press is going down, radio remains, and of course the social media, it's going up. So I think that this is an area in which Costa Rica has to face up the challenges that we are facing as a democratic society with the way the media has developed. Anyway, I must say that at the beginning of this year, 70%, 69% of the people that were consulted on which was the best way forward, they supported democracy with all its difficulties and weaknesses, preferable to any other system. So, yes, we are not pleased with the way the public education of the population is going on, but on the other hand, we trust that the popular wisdom will prevail.
Last question, and it's really prompted by all sorts of comments from members of the audience saying that they'd like to seek asylum in Costa Rica. The question is, are you aware of other countries and organizations that are desperately trying to imitate what Costa Rica has done in their own cultures and countries? Are you having a ripple effect beyond that part of the coast and that part of the Caribbean?
Yes, I am pleased to tell you that two countries in the Caribbean and Central America decided in recent years to follow our example of abolishing the army and establishing a civil police for law, for order and public security. Those two countries are, on the one hand, Panama, on the other one, Haiti. We are now 26 countries around the world that do not have a standing army. 5 of them are in the Pacific. And I think, and I've suggested, that the moment has come for the peace movement and these 26 countries to get together, to speak up, to study the examples of those countries and democratic countries that do not have a standing army. What lessons can we learn? How can we interface with the other countries with their experiences? And how can we improve? At least, I am pleased to report at least one nation here, the embassy of one nation here in Canberra has asked Costa Rica for assistance in getting to know the success and the failures and the lessons learned with our experience, as they will consider one option to abolish the army. So it's a slow process. It will never appear in the press. You can be sure of that, because peace has a bad press. War has a wonderful press. Wonderful if you think that is positive. But more and more we need to do that, and we need to have somewhere in the world a think tank that will analyze the experience of these countries and derive lessons from them and expand them worldwide.
Ambassador, let me roll things up. Thank you for your commitment to this Raising Peace Festival. Thank you for what, in my judgment, has been an inspiring address. You've contrasted the values of people's interdependence, modesty, in other words, being better than great, versus the fascination with warmongering and militarism. I mean, I can't wait to buy my ticket for Military Abolition Day. And that really is the last remark I should be making. Thank you so much. It's been an inspirational and, may I say, in times of pessimism, an optimistic message from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your patience and understanding, and for trying to understand my poor English.
No.
Thank you.
You did great.
It's excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Wonderful.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, an
Thank you so very
inspiration.
much.
Thank you, really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
thank you.
For an inspiration. Thank you.
Okay, Rita, well done. Well done, Ambassador. You must...
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you,
We don't want to go. We want more.